Hello, my name is Ted Rau. I'm part of Sociocracy For All, and this is a presentation about leadership, and I mean the leadership role in sociocracy. And before we can talk about what leadership really is, we have to talk about what it's not, because many people arrive in sociocracy having had some experiences in hierarchical organizations. And that's why people come with expectations about what leadership is, and they link leadership and that command and control system that they've seen elsewhere. And then they come into sociocracy and have a hard time unlinking those two concepts because they've always only seen them together. So what leadership is not in sociocracy is pushing decisions onto people or pushing responsibility onto people, or let's call it blame. That's not something that works in a system like sociocracy because the leader is able to have consent just like all the other circle members on policy decisions that create the frame in which we operate. Therefore, nobody can be forced into any kind of role, and also nobody can be forced against their will into a role because they would have to consent to their own being in that role. So people have a hard time understanding what leadership is without coercion. Let's look at it. So this is a little graphic here, the checklist from our book, Many Voices, One Song. So that's sort of the reference, but I'm going to say it here in technical terms. The leader role is overseeing operations in the service of the circle's aim and on the basis of consent. Okay, so what that means is the circle sets by consent the ground rules or the frame, and then people carry out their operations depending on what roles they have or what they do as circle members. And then the leader is selected to be the person who oversees those operations and making sure things get done. And that's accurate and also a little thin because I've see that people need more hand-holding or more examples, just unpacking it more to see what that means. And just to check off here, the other technical things is paying attention to the circle members. We'll talk more about that. But also the leader is a linking position in sociocracy. So you are a member of the circle and member of the parent circle. And you would report top down. So whatever the parent circle decides, you would report down to the circle that you're a leader of. One thing that's really important to me in this is that I'm not talking about leadership as in leadership theories and so on, like what makes a good leader out there in the world, like for example, a thought leader and so on. That's not at all my point, and that is by choice. I'm holding a smaller frame here because I want to think about leaders as a role. So this is not a character trait. This is not what is a great leader kind of thing. This is about what is it that we expect somebody to do who is selected leader of a circle. The reason that's so important to me is because is that often when we talk about leaders or with an uppercase L, then we think that only some people are fit to fill that position. And if we think about a decentralized system like we see here, where many people will be leaders, because each of the circles that you see here will have somebody selected leader. So we will have many leaders in an organization and very many in a society. And then it just can't be that only some people are the chosen people that can be leaders. It has to be something that many people, if not even all people, anybody could fill, because it is a role that you play. So I want to think about leaders as a role, not as something glorified that only some people are able to do. One other aspect of that is that ideas come from the collective. It's not the leader that has to have all the ideas in a sociocratic systems. The ideas come. So because so many people are able to participate and to feed their ideas into the system, I'm not worried. There are always enough ideas. What is needed is somebody to pull that together and create and have that oversight so that operations move forward and that overall the clarity is created that we need in the organization. That is a leader role thing. And but it's not that those people need to be smarter, be more wise, or be more brilliant, or in any other way different from the other people. Another mental model that really works for people, that's really only why I'm repeating it here, is also a graphic from Many Voices, One Song. And it's that the leader looks into the future. What needs to get done? Are there any requests from circle members of what we should talk about? Are there new requests from the outside, new impulses, priorities? Where do we want to be in, let's say, a few weeks, or maybe in a few months, or maybe even years, depending on what your time frame is. And this is for drafting the agenda, but it really works overall. The facilitator is in the present. So the facilitator pays attention to who is speaking now. Where do we want to go in the next few minutes? What happens during this meeting? Where do we want to get during this meeting? So that's a very narrow scope in terms of the timeline. Order of agenda items here. Well, how do I facilitate this next thing? What do I want from this agenda item? That's what the facilitator needs to pay attention to. And the secretary needs to pay attention to the past. So what needs reviewing? What did we decide that is up for review? Who did we select who needs a review or feedback? What's in our backlog? What did we say last time? What did we talk about? And so on. And you see here that often, since we often think about leaders as something more glorified than other things, these are all different skill sets that many people bring, and it's just something to pay attention to, which is actually a term that I'm going to use quite a bit, because that's what it is for me. It's paying attention to a certain thing, and the leader has to pay attention to the future, and the facilitator to the present, and the secretary to the past. We wouldn't select people into the secretary position who are very past oriented, but we would select somebody who we trust would be able to do that and really pay attention to that. So that's, again, the character trait versus role thing. What we need is new reference point, because most of us have grown up and have worked without reference point of what a good leader is. And even less what a good leader is in this new kind of system without coercion. And I notice that whenever one talks about leadership in the context of an organization, people automatically think about the rules and the rule set that we've learned that we think is the normal thing in an organization. And sometimes one has to find metaphors or comparisons outside of organizations to snap people into that other way of thinking. Because organization automatically means some command and control just by a way of conditioning. So here are two reference points that I'm offering, and maybe one of them works for you. Maybe you'll have to find some other one that works for you. Those two work for me. So one is parenting a teenager. There is no way, if you have a teenager, you know that, and if you were a teenager, you can imagine, there's no way you can parent a teenager by pure coercion. It's not only something I wouldn't want to do, it's also something that's virtually impossible, because teenagers can outsmart you. Teenagers can't be supervised 24/7, and they will find a way around things. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's just a fact. For example, you can't possibly force a teenager to eat. It is impossible. So as soon as you're in the position that you have to exercise force, you've already lost, because that's not something you can even do. The same thing is actually also true for younger children, I think. I have 5 children myself. Forcing them to do anything has never really caught on well. Thinking about how would you like to parent a teenager is a more useful frame if you think about how to be a leader. It's not going to be command and control. It's going to be some balance between wanting to be there, right, to support, having some sense of oversight, like, for example, some sense of who are you hanging out with, how do you spend your time, what do you do, right? Some support here and there, but a big portion of trust, because that's all you can do. And a lot will have to do with relationship. How good is your relationship to your teenagers, so that you know that you can be in contact with them and that they're not doing all kinds of stuff behind your back. So there's a lot of crossing your fingers, but there's a lot that you can do. And that's exactly the situation that I see in a circle. When you're the circle leader, there's no way you're going to be able to track every employee's time and how they spend each minute of it, right? The extreme case would be to install cameras in the bathroom to make sure they're not spending their time on their phone there. I mean, this is the ridiculous level that we go to once we go down the control track. So back to this reference point, we want to be a leader of a circle like we would like to parent a teenager. And that means having a good relationship, having some sense of oversight, but coming from a place of trust. The other image here that I use is having a running partner. And what I mean by that is if you, let's say, go for a run 4 times a week on specific days, and you have somebody, let's say a neighbor, that goes for a run with you, and then, you might have some agreement that says always at 7 a.m. you pick me up, and then we're gonna run for 3 miles, and then we come back. That running partner will hold you accountable, right? If you don't show up, that running partner will ask like, so last Wednesday, where were you? I was there, right? But that running partner is not going to drag you out of your house and force you to run, right? So the way it happens is that you make an agreement and you're accountable because you know somebody's waiting for you. And that person will check in on you as you will check in on that other person. So there's some give and take there. And it's not based on coercion, but on shared agreements and on the accountability that comes with a shared purpose, like in this case, running, and caring about each other as human beings. So that's the kind of leadership that is compatible with lack of coercion, like in sociocracy. And now what does it mean? It means that we will have to find the right balance between when is the time to listen and when is it time to propose something, really push something so it moves forward. And there will be a time when listening is the right thing to do, and there will be a time when proposing is the right thing to do. And most of the time, you don't know, and you will make a guess on what you think is the most appropriate action. And both of the things are things that you will have to do. Then there is holding accountable, but also trusting and letting go. Then we want to serve the aim of the circle. So we want to make sure things move forward on the operational side and detect blockages if there are any blockages. We want to give direction. We want to proactively disperse power. I'll have a few examples on that in a moment. And we will notice what falls through the cracks. So overall, I think the biggest keyword for a good leader in sociocracy is paying attention. And paying attention and noticing things is easy and hard at the same time. It's small and big at the same time. The reason it's big is because we tend to all be short on time. And time and the bandwidth to pay attention to something is something that's precious. So most of us are able to play the leader role if we allow to give it the time that it needs to really be able to pay attention. So here's an example of somebody who I work with, and her name is Amy. And she has been a leader of the same circle for many, many years. And I completely admire Amy's leadership style. And I told her that at some point, and she, was somewhat embarrassed by it because I don't think she thinks of herself as a leader. Because I think when I told her, she was thinking of that uppercase L leadership, the thought leadership and so on. That's not something she would even want for herself. But what Amy does is exactly what I would want to see from a leader of a sociocratic circle. Because here are the things that she does. She has an opinion, and she's thinking of the bigger scope of things. She says like, oh, this reminds me of the other discussion that we had, right? Or this is something that's been coming up over the last few months or years. Maybe we should address this. She takes a stand on things, right? So she does say, hold on, no, I actually don't think we should do this. I think this is against what we should be doing. So it's not that she's just leaning back and letting things happen. She is very actively involved in things and things about the implications of what we do. She is holding people accountable, but never without even a trace of blame. So whenever she checks in, she actually literally has this thing that she asks, "Hi, I might be wrong, but I don't think I've seen the email that you said you would send out." Because she's always leaving some room for maybe it's me, but maybe it's you, and I'm just checking. Or she'll have phrases like, "I'm not sure, but I just want to be absolutely sure that we're clear about this. You said you would do this, did you?" You know, so she's clearly taking care of operations, but she is never using that as an excuse to blame anybody for not doing something or for doing something. She always makes sure that tensions or topics that keep floating up make it on the agenda, on the backlog. If there have been requests of our circles, she filters them and makes sure they end up on the next agenda or whenever it's appropriate time, so things don't fall through the cracks. If there are extra tasks, like for example, let's say there was a conflict between our circle and another circle, somebody needs to go talk to the other circle, and then Amy will self-nominate for those kind of tasks, knowing that she's the leader, and that's what a leader role brings along, that you will have to do things like that. And yes, especially the uncomfortable ones. And I'm aware that she is self-nominating because she's the leader, and not because she thinks she's the best one or because she's the most likely, so she's the most prone to do it. She really does it out of that sense of service that she takes from being in that role. So what I'm saying again is, again, about this character versus role thing. This is not something that is coming from her character. This is something that is coming from her role. And that I really admire, because I know that she's choosing to serve the role well and not doing what comes easy to her. She's super open to feedback on how to go about things and asking for feedback on her leadership style a lot. And I love that. So she will, for example, if she does have to do something, just an executive decision between meetings where she doesn't have time to check with the circle, she will always be upfront about what she decided, what had led her to do that, and she will often ask, "What did you think about that? If something like that comes up again, should I do it any differently? What's your take on that?" And that's brilliant. And over the years, we've really built a good sort of way of doing things in that circle, thanks to behavior like that. She's always willing to acknowledge mistakes, very courageously so, and that's one of the things I admire the most about her. So if you've been selected leader of a circle, I hope that this makes sense to you, because it might help you see what it is that is being asked from you and how you can contribute to your circle as well as the organization at large.